The way NBA teams go about spending their money has massive consequences if it's not done properly. Contract negotiations can literally make or break a team's ability to compete at the highest level moving forward, and figuring out which players are deserving of huge paydays and which ones are not worth the value that they are demanding can be very difficult. But when teams cave and hand out a risky deal, it can end up looking pretty awful in hindsight. That's exactly what we'll be going over in both today's video and in my next video, as we will be going through every single NBA team, identifying the worst contract they have on their current roster that is infringing on their ability to improve the team around them. Today we'll be going through the teams in the Eastern Conference, and tomorrow we will go through the teams in the West, so stay tuned for that as well. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. We'll be going in alphabetical order here, so first up is the Atlanta Hawks, and the worst contract on their payroll this year is DeAndre Hunter, who is being paid $70 million over the next 3 seasons. The Hawks don't necessarily have a single egregious contract, but Hunter is their second highest paid player, and realistically he's a solid 3-and-D guy who should be more like the 4th or 5th guy on a team with serious goals, not second. Next is the Boston Celtics, and their worst contract right now is Drew Holiday being paid $134 million over the next 4 years. Holiday has had a long career where he's been one of the league's premier defenders and has maintained a borderline all-star level throughout, but at 34 years old, he is clearly starting to regress, posting his lowest scoring output since his rookie year this past season and visibly lacking the burst that he once had too. Next is the Brooklyn Nets, and the worst contract on their payroll is Ben Simmons making $40 million this upcoming season. Simmons' contract quickly became one of the worst in the whole NBA after his time in Philadelphia ended because he has never come close to returning to his former all-star form, and now his albatross of a deal has become virtually impossible to trade away to clear up cash on their books, so they're going to have to play it out and wait for him to hit free agency next summer. Next is the Charlotte Hornets, and the worst contract on their payroll is Miles Bridges being paid $75 million over the next 3 years. Bridges just got handed this contract this summer after some serious off-court legal troubles, and while he does still produce at a solid rate on the floor, the Hornets are trying to shake their problematic losing culture, and Bridges didn't have many other suitors this summer for free agency anyway, so they were seemingly bidding against themselves with the amount that they ended up paying him here. Next is the Chicago Bulls, and the worst contract on their payroll right now is Zach Lavine being paid $138 million over the next 3 years. Lavine is coming off of his worst season in years and is coming off of a surgery that ended his season early last year. Those two things combined with the amount of money that he is owed has made him virtually untradeable because of how the Bulls have absolutely been trying to get him off the books and not being able to do so. Next is the Cleveland Cavaliers, and their worst contract is Evan Mobley earning a 5-year max deal worth $224 million. Since Mobley has been drafted, he has undoubtedly been one of the most impactful defensive players in the league, but questions about whether his offensive game will ever develop enough to justify being paid a full max contract are valid. Next is the Detroit Pistons, and the worst contract on their payroll is Tobias Harris making $52 million over the next 2 years. The Pistons don't necessarily have a glaringly bad contract on their payroll, but Tobias Harris has been one of the prime examples of empty production in recent years, and is not the kind of big signing that will change much for this rebuilding group anyway. Next is the Indiana Pacers, and the worst contract on their payroll right now is Obi Toppin making $58 million over the next 4 years. Again, the Pacers don't necessarily have horrible deals that they've handed out, but Toppin represents a conundrum that they'll have to address soon, as they drafted Jarris Walker in the lottery 2 years ago, yet are now paying Toppin, who is that same position's backup, significant money as a non-starter, who is also in the way of their lottery picks development. Next is the Miami Heat, and the worst contract on their payroll is Duncan Robinson making $39 million over the next 2 seasons. Robinson got a pretty hefty contract extension back in 2021 when role players were cashing in way more than they do now, and in hindsight, Robinson has not proven to be worth his about $20 million per year price tag, as his one redeeming quality, his three-point shooting, has not even topped the 40% mark since signing this deal. Next, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the worst contract on their payroll is Chris Middleton making $65 million over the next 2 years. Middleton has had a long career as one of the more underrated fringe all-star talents in the NBA, but injuries have done a number on him, and now he's nowhere near his prior form, and at 33 years of age, the odds are pointing towards him continuing to trend downward moving forward. Next is the New York Knicks, and the worst contract on their payroll is OG Anunoby making $212 million over the next 5 years. Anunoby is basically the choice by default here because while you could nitpick about the fact that his paycheck is typically handed out to all-star talents and he has yet to prove he's at that level, it's more about how well the Knicks have spent their money everywhere else, not really having any other bad deals on their payroll to even choose from. Next is the Orlando Magic, and the worst contract on their payroll is Cole Anthony making $26 million over the next 2 years. The Magic are another team without many hefty deals on their payroll at all, so Anthony's extension becomes the choice by default because even though he is a spark plug scorer off the bench for them, his role fluctuates by matchup and probably isn't part of the team's long-term plans. Next is the Philadelphia 76ers, and the worst contract on their payroll is Paul George making $212 million over the next 4 years. The Sixers needed to take a big swing and had a lot of money to do it, so they could afford to overpay Paul George to seal him away from LA in free agency, but that doesn't change the fact that it is still a bit of an overpay for an aging star like George. Next is the Toronto Raptors, and the worst contract on their payroll is Immanuel Quickley making $130 million over the next 4 seasons. The Raptors are betting on Quickley emerging moving forward, but they paid him like a star before he's actually proven to be a star, which will always be risky in the NBA with how fast things can change. Next is the Washington Wizards, and the worst contract on their payroll is Jordan Poole making $95 million over the next 3 years. Poole got traded to Washington here and was expected to have more freedom and break out, yet somehow he got way worse with his efficiency tanking. His decision-making raises eyebrows on a nightly basis, his defense is non-existent, and he's just not worth the money that he is making. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think the worst contracts in the NBA are. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.